to the Jin's treasure. Today we are gonna do, oh, I grabbed the wrong crystal. Although this is a pretty cool one. A ruby, is that a ruby zoisite, I believe? Beautiful. Actually, we're gonna be playing with this turquoise nugget. So this is a raw turquoise nugget. You could see there's even like little specks of silver still in there. And the reason I chose this stone to wrap today is to show you that we can wrap anything. We can wrap awkward shaped stones. We can wrap, excuse me, we can wrap raw stones, which, for example, this is a raw stone. If you didn't know, the difference between a raw stone, there's only raw and tumbled. So this would be tumbled and polished versus a raw stone would be like something that you could just go out in nature and find as is. Here would be like an extreme version. So this would be like if you're just going on the hiking trails, you look down and you see a white rock and oh, that's quartz. Well, this is raw quartz. And with that, let's get into it. So what we're gonna do, I think that silver and turquoise look amazing together, especially, I mean, the fact is they grow together. So it's like a natural harmony. So for me, I always choose silver when working with turquoise. I suppose I can't say always, never say never, right? So maybe there will be one day where I work with gold, but I could see myself maybe working with gold by request, but I can't imagine copper and turquoise ever to be really looking that great. Well, of course, everybody has a difference of opinion, and that's fine. I'm of the opinion that copper and turquoise don't go together. Silver and turquoise, that's the stuff. Anyways, so we have, and this is actually copper coated, or silver coated copper. So even though I said all that about copper, we're still technically using copper wire. And we don't need a lot. This is the 20 gauge. Looks like it was written on the back, but it's been rubbed off over time. So we don't need a lot of the 20 gauge wire. I just kind of did, I think, like 1 or 2 spools. When I say spool, I mean like all the way around is a spool, and then all the way around again, that would be 2 spools. So for the 20 gauge wire, we're going to use 2 spools worth of wire. And actually what we'll do is we'll clip that because we're going to turn that into 2 symmetrical or equal in length wires. Next, we're gonna add some, I believe this is actually 28 gauge, which I don't normally work with. I usually prefer like 24, or sometimes I'll do 26. I think I just was not finding that at the time and went with the 28 because that's what I could find. Ultimately, it's not super important what gauge you use. I would say what is important is that 1 gauge is the bigger gauge and 1 gauge is the smaller gauge. So I took for this 24 gauge or 28 gauge silver coated copper wire, I did about an arm's length, and then what I did is I kissed the 2 tip ends together after I clipped it, and then I zipper. You've seen me do this before too. I zipper all the way down to find that loop, and that's gonna be the halfway mark. So what I'll do is thread both of the 20 gauge wires through that loop, and then I'll begin to coil the wire. Sorry about that. I had to take it off screen and get it a little bit organized. But we're back here. So with that first wrap around being more or less, I'm just kind of eyeballing the middle of these 2 20 gauge wires. So we're just eyeballing the middle, right? And then that's where we begin our coils. So my technique for the coils, I find to be the fastest, although I recommend to start go very slow. Like you can see how slow I'm winding this, but I'm slowing it down one so that you can really see what I'm doing, but also because this is the speed that you should probably begin with, as opposed to me. I mean, once you get a few coils done, you can try out different techniques. For me, when I get a few coils done, I like to pinch down with pliers there, and I feel like I have a much more sturdy grip on the wires and I can go a lot faster. Also, the tools, the finger tools, are a lot skinnier than my human hand fingers. So it's a lot easier for me to visually see what's going on in there. But this is the pliers technique, as opposed to, we'll switch it back. So this is the fingers technique. And honestly, I have it in my experience of teaching wire wrapping. I see that different people have different preferences. So just do whatever is most comfortable for you. So after I get a few coils done, I gotta remember, we don't wanna get a lot, because what we're doing is, this is gonna be the base. And so what we need to do is just cover basically the width of the stone. And you can see this is a long, skinny stone, so the width is not very great. So now what I'm gonna do is, this is where I started in the middle, and then I just reversed the wire around. So now instead of going out that way, as you remember, I was coiling out in this direction. I just flipped the wires around, so now that coiled section is aimed that direction. This is where we're back at the middle. And I just want to kind of give a few coils to balance out the sides. It's not going to be super essential, because I definitely have more than enough wire, which you should always, that's the number one rule of wire wrapping, is to always, when you're pulling the amount of wire that you're using, you always want to overestimate your wire. Because when you try to get precise and be frugal with your wire, you end up not being able to finish some pieces because you run out of wire. So this looks pretty good. I would say that's almost even a little bit too many coils, because it's clearly, if we begin to form this frame around the turquoise nugget, we can begin to see that it's covered the width and some. So we really didn't need that and some, but that's all right. Honestly, with the raw forms of crystals, this style of wrapping is even easier, because you have a lot of these hard edges and angles to work with. Anyways, what I'm doing is taking the wire that was wrapping around outwards towards the right, and I'm going to bring it around the back side of the crystal over to the left side, and then I'm going to I'll bend these out at the top to give me a little bit more room to work with up here. So now I can just bring that wire around. And so now you can see what I've done with the wire that was coiling out here. I've brought it around the back. So if you could imagine, the crystal here is here. So the wire comes around the back and then attaches to the other end here. Now, you can probably guess what we're going to do next. We're going to bring this other wire that was on the left side, bring it around over across the front or the top of the stone. So if the stone, again, was in place, this wire would be going over the front of it, and then we're going to attach it to the right side. So you might have noticed that I am removing my stone when I do these wraps. And that is only because I'm getting away with that, only because of the flatness of the stone. So you can see it's very flat. But if it were something a little bit more bulky, like this stone, for example, I would have to compensate for that that girth or that width of the stone. So if the stone were placed, if you could imagine that this frame was built for this stone, instead of removing the stone and then bringing the wire directly across, I would prefer to keep the stone in place so that when I'm wrapping around, I'm not wrapping too tight that the stone won't fit through, if that makes sense. But for this example, we chose our flat turquoise stone. So I guess in conclusion, my advice to you is to, when you are shopping for stones to wrap, or when you're hunting for stones to wrap, however you acquire your stones, what's important is that you want to look for something that has a flat body. So for example, like this is pretty flat. Obviously this nugget is super flat. These are bulky. They're great because they look like cubes, so you would think, oh, like geometric structures, that's going to be good for wrapping. But honestly, because of that width or that girth or the fatness of the stone, it gets in the way. So, and that's why you'll see a lot of like cut stones, like cabochons, whatever you pronounce them. They're always going to be flat, 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 all flat. And that's because that's what's easiest to work with. So next, the next step we're working on is continuing our coils. So once we've switched sides, so I brought that left over the front, over to the right, and now I continue to coil up on that side. And then after I get a few coils done, I'll switch back and do the left side too. So we keep on coiling here and here. Another thing too is that when you're doing your coils, you want to make sure that they're nice and tight like that. And also, I think I might have made a mistake here on this one. You see how there's that one coil that really stands out. What happened there is it was actually it was like a double coil. So I coiled it, and then that coiled section I accidentally coiled again. So I'll leave that mistake there this time. If I were super perfectionist, I would have to go back and fix that. But honestly, that is such a subtle detail that I can still sell it at a good price. Plus, this is a very simple wrap. So by the way, I do sell my wraps. I don't know if anyone was ever wondering that. I know nobody ever asked it in the comments section, but it did occur to me the other day that, oh, I've never actually said that. Yes, I do sell my work. And so a tiny little nugget like this, I would probably sell for like $30. And for $30, you're getting a raw turquoise nugget with some real silver specks still in there. And it's a pendant. So it's something that you can wear for style and wear for the metaphysical qualities. So for $30, I'm not so concerned about a little mistake like that. Now, if it were something else, if it were like a little bit of a more high-end piece with a more intricate design like this, I would insist. I would have to go back and strive for perfection. But for today, for this simple wrap, we'll allow a few errors. So from here, what we can do is take our stone and tuck it in there. And then we can get an idea to see, oh, how far we have to go. So for this one, this wire down here, I'll probably stop and then continue coiling to catch it up to about there. And then I'll do another cross, just like this one comes across over the top and over the back. We'll do that one more time, and then we'll finish up with the, at the top with the lace, the neck lace loops. Oops. And I'm gonna switch out and grab my pliers. I think it'll go a little bit faster. So you have the technique down now, and I'll still show you, but I'll pick up my pace and go a little bit faster now because we're trying to get this finished. Another thing too, what I just did is, you'll notice I opened it up a little bit, so that's going to give me some more room to work with. You could play around with that if it works for you, but just keep in mind one thing about, I call it the touches rule, and you want to minimize the amount of touches. And by touches, I mean like bends. So if you are bending the wire, or if you're touching the wire to manipulate it to bend at one angle, you'll never truly be able to undo that angle. You could kind of massage it and smooth out, like if it was really kinked or mangled wire, you could kind of massage that. But the truth is, those angles, once they're bent, on some level, they'll always be there. And I did a little bit too many coils. Got caught up with that conversation. It happens. But that looks fine because it's still not quite all the way at the top. And in fact, we'll use that to our advantage to create a little bit of a style. So the style is going to be like a diagonal angle. So you can't really see what I'm talking about because I'm coiling the backside. But now, once I get that anchored, I'm going to bring this wire from the front over to the other side, and now I can show you it's kind of angled. So this is kind of like an angle going down, whereas this is an angle going up, and so it creates a little bit of a style to your technique. I'm all about style and technique. One thing that I've done in the past, because I've done this angled style before, and one thing I've done in the past is like even doing like one and then another wire going across just below it. There's something about having a partner coil or a partner wire. It creates it's visually it creates a pattern to the eye, and patterns are pleasing, whereas a one-off is I don't want to say it's not ugly, but like it's just not as beautiful or as something to appreciate. I don't know. You can appreciate the oneness. So as I come to the finish here, you'll notice I did not a great job of keeping my coils not doubling up on this side here. But again, I am not worried about it because it's not going to be one of those mistakes that stands out significantly. It's more like one of those mistakes that, like, if you miss a stitching in an entire rug, one little off stitch is not going to be noticed. Which actually reminds me, kind of, I kind of got that story from, it's the Muslim belief that only Allah is perfect. So a lot of like Arabic rug makers will intentionally create a flawed stitch to honor the perfection that it only is for Allah. Not to say that like I'm Muslim or anything. I find it fascinating, a fascinating little excerpt of history. So now we have completed the framework, and we are going to work on those loops. Oh, also, by the way, I know I didn't say it verbally, but you could kind of see what I did visually. Once we got to the top, we just brought the two frame wires together at like a bottleneck, and then I took the coiling wires, those 28 gauge wires, and just took both of them and coiled to kind of tie it together, and that's what happened there. And now what happens next is we create our loops. So I pinch down, not all the way at the top, but a little bit down below, and start curling from there. And the idea of not going all the way to the top is that once you finish that loop-to-loop curl, this is the loop-to-loop. On the other side, you have a little bit of a tail wire, and that's important. You want to keep that tail wire because what we do next is we take our 28 gauge wires and we continue to coil once more, catching both of those tails of that loop-to-loop so that they are now tied in there. And then what we do is I like to just do a little angled bend, and that kind of locks it so that the wire's not, let me bring it closer. So with this wire having its little bendy curve, it makes it so that the wire can't slip through where we've tied these through. So if it were straight, if you could imagine this is a straight wire, it could potentially slide through and undo this loop to loop. But now that I have that angle, it's kind of like tied it or anchored it into place. So you can see it's the same thing with this one that's a flat wire. If I left that flat, it would not be good. And it's a little bit too much wire, so I'm gonna clip that. And then with the little tip, remember, we wanna keep our little tail. With that, we're just gonna bend a little angle. And again, that's so that the wire doesn't slip through out the top and then undo the loop-to-loops. Now this is all extra wire. Everything, we've completed the wrap. So now everything is extra wire that we're free to do whatever with. We can do a little bit of a style, which I'll show you with this. So these two thicker 20 gauge wires, we can mimic what we did with the coils to wrap around. I call this the scarf because I think of the loop as like a head, and then the crystal is the body. Between the head and the body is the neck. And so these 20 gauge wires are the scarf that's just kind of wrapping around, keeping the neck warm. Not mandatory, but it is one style option that I almost always opt for. I love it. I think it looks super clean. And it might not look clean 100% every time, but as you get better at it, you'll start to see how to make it look like, you know. So here we are. We have our completed wire wrap. I'll do a few more wraps around here just to, so for example, that there's like a few gaps in there, and so that creates kind of like some sharp edges. And what I'll do is just continue to wrap and coil around to kind of bulk that out, and then kind of work my way down with the wire, and we are good. So I'll clip all that excess out, and then now what we'll do is we'll pinch the tip of the pliers to the tip of the wire, and then we'll create a little hook. So keep in mind, there's two wires here, but I've hooked them both. I've bent a hook on both of them. And then with that hook, we want to try to get that hook and use it kind of like a fish hook or a trap. And then this is the lip, the fish lips that we are trying to get hooked up. So you just tuck it underneath there. And there we have our turquoise nugget completed